Hi, everyone. So, the future is optimized. It couldn't be more random. Yesterday, I asked the question to myself, how did I get to this topic? And I had to do some research on my mail account. And I actually found out, this came out in March, when the the communications team of DCMN asked me to give in some input. So what could be Scale about? So what could we talk about? And I gave some, I thought like, TV is old school, we talked about it a bit. And I just said, do something about future, about optimization, and then the topic was done for me. And 2 weeks later, they were approaching me, okay, it's fine, management approved, please talk about it. First reaction was, what to say about it. Then I was thinking about it over the whole year. I was thinking about all the projects that we are running in offline marketing. So for those who don't know DCMN, in offline marketing, this means we are doing TV campaigns, radio, out-of-home, print. And I was thinking about what was the most exciting project we were working on this year, and I found one that I want to share with you this year. And I hope I can share the excitement with you. It's kind of a case study that I will go through with you. But first of all, if we talk about optimization, what does optimization mean? So for me, this is the improvement of the current status, and it's kind of an ongoing thing. And for me, it's basically applying to any kind of ROI-driven campaign, KPI-driven campaign. And there's something I learned, especially this year, and this is how many companies are actually out there not measuring anything or measuring something with the wrong KPIs. When I talk about big brands, what do I mean with big brands? Basically, you can see this as kind of the traditional companies that have been out there in the market for years. Maybe they have online shops, maybe not. So it could be a retailer, could be big FMCG companies, could be players out of the car industry. And in the end of this talk, I basically have like 3 things that you should take with you. And if you have friends in this industry, let them know. But it's not only applying to them, but it's also applying to anyone who's working in the digital industry. There might be something that you can take for you. So watch out. Before we start, we have to do some theory work. We need to talk about media theory, but just for a second. By the way, if you asked what the fuck is this, that's the beautiful picture gallery of our strategy team. I really love it. I was looking for something which is like, before we start, let's take a step back. That's what I find there. So media theory, how are media campaigns planned, and how are especially offline marketing campaigns planned? This is pretty interesting, and it's really important to talk about this before we go into measuring and to optimization. Let's think of a marketing campaign. Usually it has a goal, might be an increase in brand awareness, might be increasing sales, whatever, but you want to do something. You need to push your business. You're defining a target group, so by gender, by age, by kind of interest. And based on this, you are selecting the media. For example, you say, okay, I need radio in my mix, and I need out-of-home, and maybe I need some TV. And there's this one question that a media plan needs to answer, and this is, how efficient do I reach my target group? Especially, what's my target group potential? How many people are out there? And how many of them can be reached with this certain campaign, with this certain flight that I'm doing? And how often do I reach them? Or to put it in another word, what's the GRP behind? So GRP, for everyone who never heard of it, it's a gross rating point, and it's basically the net reach multiplied by frequency. It's one of the most known media KPIs in the world. Almost in every country you know about it. And when you know about your GRP, you know, okay, if I deliver 100 GRPs, what's my cost per GRP in the end to basically compare campaigns. We were also asking ourselves, how is this media data gathered? So, because if everyone is relying on it, if everyone says it's such an important KPI, we should at least challenge how this media data is allocated. We were looking at this, for example, in Germany, for TV, you have a panel. So they have 5,000 households with 10,000 people in. These people have a set-up box at home, and basically every day when they start watching TV, this box is tracking them and is sending the data to GfK. And based on this, you have like every day the latest numbers. You know how many people were watching TV yesterday, what kind of channels did they look, how long did they watch a certain TV show. The problem about it is that this panel didn't really change over the last years, but on the same side, media consumption changed. Also, the kind of demographics are changing, people going into the cities. So there's a lot of stuff that should be adapted in this kind of measurement, but it's not done. You just need to think about this. It's no too much criticism. I just want to mention it. It's even funnier if you look at it for out of home or for radio. So how is it measured in out of home? So basically, to keep it short, because you could talk about this for an hour, they're asking people, they're calling people and they're asking them, where did you go yesterday? So what was your way to work? How do you get home? What did you do in your free time? At the same time, they're also tracking people, so a certain number of people has a GPS tracker, and they just see where these people go. And then they extrapolate this and say, okay, on this certain street, there's a certain number of contacts that you can reach. This is done once a year. For radio, also not bad. Again, telephone interviews twice a year. Actually, if you want to know when this wave is happening, you just need to go outside in the street and watch for out-of-home placements of radio stations, or just listening to radio and listen to sweepstakes that they have that are really, really, really good. Win like 10,000 euro or something. Because they're doing this because they know, okay, people will be called in the next 2 weeks, so it's really important to be in their awareness set as a radio channel. Why do I say all of this? In the end, it comes back to GRP, and it's coming back to the question, how do traditional brands evaluate their campaigns? And you wouldn't believe how many of them are doing this based on GRP. So basically, they are planning a campaign, or their media agency is planning a campaign, and they know, okay, for example, TV campaign will deliver 500 GRP. In the end, the media agency is getting back to them after the campaign and says, yeah, actually it was not 500, but 600. This was an over-delivery. It was a really successful campaign. But it doesn't say anything about the impact. It might even be that these companies are doing research, or they're doing some kind of tracking. For example, if you're doing a brand campaign, you should run a brand survey to find out what did the campaign do with your brand awareness. But what do you think, how many times is this played back to the internal media planner in this company, or even to the agency that is planning their media? Not that often. Even we have at DCMN experienced this, or better, our founders experienced that. Before they built DCMN, they were running multiple online shops. So you should ask Matthias about it, it's really funny. And they were doing TV campaigns for their online shops, and they did some TV and found out actually it has a quite strong impact on their business, but they don't want to do an analysis just based on Excel every time. So they went out, met agencies, met sales houses, and asked them, do you have any tool to measure TV, to measure a direct impact? And everyone told them, no, it's not possible. Nowadays, so 8 years later, we know it's possible, and we are doing this, and it's working out. So if it's possible, but someone's not doing it, the question is why? Because they don't understand how it works out. So how should a campaign be set up that is performance-driven? No picture, it's getting serious. What you can see here is the test, learn, scale principle that we are using at DCMN. Basically, it's defined by 3 stages. The first one, for me, it's one of the most important ones. If you think about any kind of campaign, it's a test phase. And the test phase not only starts when, for example, let's say a radio flight starts, it's starting before, because you're setting the framework for the test, which means you want to find out, okay, what will be the KPI that I will measure, how will I measure it, and what do I need to set up before I start my campaign? That's really important. If you think about the tracking once the flight is running or by the end of the flight, it's too late. You also look at the kind of media mix that you want to run for. So in my example here, let's say it's still about radio. So I'm selecting the kind of channels that are matching with a certain target, I go for it. Once this test is running, I move over into the learning phase, which means I'm evaluating the results, I'm looking at the data. If it's possible, I try to optimize already to see how far can I push this channel if I really want to. And once this is done, I'm moving into the scale phase. In best case, my CPX, whatever it is, might be a cost per visit, might be cost per order, is going down on the long term. Most of ROI-driven companies are working like this. They maybe have a different name for it, or they never visualized it some way, but most of them are using it. So what happens if you take this with you and you go to a traditional brand, you go to a traditional player? We experienced it this year, and it was challenging. The picture is describing it pretty good. So on the left side, you can see this DCMN. On the right side, you have a classic retailer. The first thing you need to do is aligning your mindsets, and this took weeks or even months. So you need to have the same understanding of what does performance mean, what does performance-driven marketing mean, how should we look at data, and we did this with a big German retailer. Some information about it. So there's a retailer with more than 1,000 stores in Germany. And they are basically doing national radio campaigns with 7-digit budgets. What does national radio campaign mean? Some of you might know the German radio market is pretty fragmented. We have more than 400 radio stations in Germany that you could potentially book. Most of them are booked regionally or even locally. To make it easier for everyone, there are kind of packages that you can buy. So you can buy like packages for a federal state, you can buy a package for a certain region, or you can even buy the national package, which is done including a lot of channels. They basically did this for two reasons. The first reason was they have 1,000 shops, so it's high likely that they have a shop in every single federal state of Germany. The second one, it's just easier. So you just do one booking, you book all stations at one time, so it's pretty easy for both the media agency and the client. The question was, is this still reasonable? So they asked us to challenge their current media strategy and to set a KPI that they can use in future to optimize their media spends. So we said, okay, challenge accepted. The first thing we did was basically turning some music on, relaxing, calming down, because this was a lot of data. After we did this, we started working. We were basically running through 4 different steps to go into this project. The first one was a CPSV analysis. So what is the CPSV? This is the cost per store visit, which takes into relation the number of people going into the store and the cost for this. So how did we measure this? Basically, the good thing about this company was they have these trackers in their stores. So whenever someone is basically walking into the store, this person is counted as a visitor, which is pretty great because it's comparable to what online shops can do. We were looking at different types of measurement that we could use here together with our data scientists that are really, really cool guys, and it would not have been possible without them. We found a model that we could use to create this kind of uplift. It's kind of a model which is between baseline and uplift, and we were using a mean change, which means we were looking at the baseline period and we were looking at the evolution of traffic between the beginning and the end of this period. We did this for a baseline and we did this for the campaign, and we could actually see there was a kind of uplift. By the way, which was really important to me, there was no direct correlation between airing a radio spot and a visit uplift on the same day. So we could see that this is a direct medium, but it's not directly happening at the same day. So it takes a couple of days until people listening to the ad a couple of times and then go into the stores. At the same time, we were connecting these uplifts on the zip code level with the radio spend. And so we were able to basically calculate this cost per store visit, which was the first step for us. It was really important to us. No other step would have been possible without this first one, or the second one, or the third one. So basically, this was done. What did we do then? We were testing if we can go into kind of regional focus, which means we were comparing the federal states of Germany. So we were aggregating the data, and we could make this comparable. For this, we were selecting 3 different clusters. The first cluster were federal states with a really high efficiency, so really low cost per store visit, but also with a considerably low uplift. For example, Berlin was one of them. So really efficient, but the uplift was not that high. The same cluster were channels channels, federal states that were less efficient but brought a lot of uplift. So for example, Bavaria, really, really nice. And then the third cluster, we had really inefficient federal states. We had even one with a negative uplift, which means people didn't want to do stores, didn't want to go to the stores anymore after they heard the spot. Funny. But we will see there were differences, really important, because this means for us that we were able to go deeper. So in the next step, we were challenging the media plan, which means we were looking into every single federal state, and we're looking into this to see, is it possible to book the local channels that were included in the national package, adding more volume to them and achieving the same kind of cost per store visit by achieving certain media KPIs that we were achieving before. We saw that this was possible, especially for the federal states in the first two clusters, which was really good. Sorry. Which brought us to the fourth step. We were building a new media planning, which means we were selecting the federal states of interest, and we're using the same kind of budget to see where this is bringing us to. So what happened? Results. As I said, first of all, we were just using the same budget, but we did a reallocation, and we did a regional media planning. The first thing we saw with the simulation, we can achieve 30% more store visits for the same budget, which is pretty cool, as I'm closing out federal states, pushing others, achieving more on a global scale. The second thing, it was even possible to reduce the cost per store visit at the same time by 27%. So we saw, okay, this actually makes sense. But what does it mean? What's the outcome for the client? Basically, this means that they need to rethink their whole strategy they were running during the last years. There's one option that they could do or that they're looking into right now, decreasing the radio budget while achieving the same uplift as before, and having the rest of the budget available to push the federal states that are now not in the radio planning anymore. Because still there are stores and you need to promote something there, but you can do this with different media. So you can get back to the test stage and find out other opportunities for these federal states. Finally, now the company has a KPI in hand that they can use to evaluate their campaigns, which means that their future is now optimized. So what do we learn out of this? The first one is really important. Do not use GRP to measure the success of any offline marketing campaign. It's still an important KPI, because you need to know where is the target group, which media are they consuming. However, you need to add additional KPIs to really see how successful your campaign is. If you only use the GRP, you will never know what's going on. The second one, for me the most important one, everything can be measured. There are no exceptions. If you do a campaign and you don't think about the framework before you start, and after the campaign you say, it didn't work out, I didn't see anything, it's impossible to measure it, you need to go back to the beginning and think about, okay, did I set up it properly? Really, really important. And if everything can be measured, everything can be optimized. And the third one, it sounds quite randomly, but you should always challenge your media mix constantly, also your regional one. Because it can be that something worked out pretty good, even if you didn't look at it on a detailed way. But this doesn't mean that it's going to work like this in future. If you think of the different kind of media consumption, which is changing not year by year, but even week by week. So, the only thing I can say now is like, may your future be optimized.
There we are. Sebastian, that was very efficient. We do have time for questions for Sebastian, if anyone has any in the audience. Do we have a few? I think I have one on deck. What would you say is the most difficult offline media to measure? And how have you solved this?
It's between radio and out of home, because both is kind of regional media. So the advantage that you're facing in TV, for example, that you're reaching a lot of people at one single point, which means that you can see an uplift in traffic pretty easily, is not there. Which means that you need to dive into the data. You need to specifically filter the traffic, for example, if you're a website, by the certain region, and you need to exclude any kind of seasonal effects or campaign effects. So, for example, you want to do an out-of-home campaign, but doing TV at the same time makes it pretty hard to measure. But as I said, it's still not impossible to do if you are setting a framework before you start your test. For example, if you do TV and you want to test out-of-home, you shouldn't stop TV, but you should just do it as you did it before, so you have a kind of clear baseline. But it's one of both.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Right up front. Do we have a mic runner? Yes.
Grüß dich, Sebastian. So you think, sticking to what you just said, that basically the difference of audience measurement by the specific media has sort of no role. I'm alluding to the fact that the TV GRP is measured, estimated, put it as you prefer, on a second base. Meanwhile, in some European countries, radio, for example, is an average on a quarter over an hour, and the data are collected only twice a year. Do you think that this aspect plays a role, or is it neglectable?
It's not playing a role for the campaign measurement itself, because we need to live with the fact that it's not possible to do like the media research 100% properly. We need to deal with what we have. In person, I don't think that it's efficient to do like telephone interviews twice a year and telling this to the radio stations before so they can react to this and can influence this. However, we need to deal with what we have. And yeah, as long as we understand that these are planning KPIs and I should only use them for planning, I can deal with it. But if you go around in the German radio scene and ask them what they think about the measurement, they don't really like it.
I think we'd have time for one last question. Perfect.
Thank you. I've got a question that may be out of context, but I don't know who else to ask, so I'm going to ask you. When it comes to when it comes to the booking process, you mentioned radio and TV, etc. So we had this AR, VR talk before, and apparently what I just learned is that there is no regulation. But what I imagine, for instance, is you have, let's say, McDonald's on one side of the street, and someone, let's say Burger King, decides to use the digital space on that exact location, showing Ronald McDonald fleeing to the other side of the street to Burger King. So, in your opinion, whose responsibility is that? Who should own that space, and how should the booking process be regulated?
That's a good one. As this is a kind of specific case, which is probably not happening right now, but might happen in future, I cannot answer this. In general, when it comes to out-of-home, for example, whatever you want to bring live, whatever you want to show at a billboard or show on a digital billboard, is approved by the one who owns the space. So, for example, if this would be like a digital billboard of Ströer, I'm pretty sure they will check it and see if they see any issue there, and it might be that they will say, sorry, that's maybe not the right placement for this. But who will see?
Okay, thanks.
So I think that's all the time that we have for questions. Sebastian, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.